Okay, so first of all, good yontiv, everyone. The Rebbe used the word yontiv on Yud Shevat, so can we. As you know, it's the 67th anniversary of the Rebbe assuming leadership, which was in Tafshin Yud, or in the English year of 1950. So even though formally the Rebbe started and accepted leadership the next year when he said the Basi L'Gani, but as soon as the Frierdiker Rebbe's Histalkus, which as you may know was 8 o'clock, a little after 8 o'clock in the morning on a Shabbos, Yud Shevat, Shabbos Parashat Boy, so Chassidim, as soon as one Rebbe, as they say, the sun sets, the sun rises, V'zarach HaShemesh, U'ba HaShemesh, V'zarach HaShemesh, so we consider it 67 years. Now, I just want to say a few words. I'll answer the questions, but I think it'll be worthwhile sharing a few words that the biggest challenge, of course, all the time, and especially today, for those that didn't see the Rebbe Begashmis, which is all of you, and a whole generation, it's already over 22 years since Gimel Tammuz, is finding relevance, the personal relevance and connection to the Rebbe, to Yechidus, and of course to Yud Shevat. Now, I'm assuming you already have that relevance and you have these discussions, but since we all also have, as the Tanya says, on the left side of our heart, we also have a Nefesh Abamis, it's not always easy to relate. You know, many people are more excited by Gashmisdika things like money, sports, and other pleasures of this world, and they find that much more relevant, frankly, than they do Yiddishkeit, Chassidus, and the Rebbe. So I want to just share a few words about this, because the truth is this challenge exists all the time, not just after Gimel Tammuz, for everybody all the time. Years ago, I taught Tanya in one of the Yeshivas here, and because I had the privilege to work on the Rebbe's Farbrengens, which meant Shabbos and Yontif, when no recordings were made and no notes were taken, we had to remember, called Chayzrim. So I was one of the Chayzrim. We remembered 6, 7, 8 hours of the Rebbe's Farbrengens, almost word for word. And then we documented it. We wrote it down. So I was also maniach, meant writing it down and getting it published. So I had access to the Rebbe, and we used to ask questions all the time to the Rebbe. I'll share maybe a few of those, a few interesting anecdotes about that. So since I had access to the Rebbe, I asked the Rebbe a question that when it says in the Sharblat and Tanya, you all know that the Sharblat on the front page of Tanya, which is the whole basis of Chassidus, it says that the Tanya is based on Korev Elecha Dover Meid, right? You're familiar with that? How would you translate the word Korev? Tell me. Close, right? Close? Everybody said close? I can't hear you. Huh?
Yeah.
Close. Now, close, someone said relevant. Good, that's the right word. See, close doesn't mean anything. I'm sitting right now close to you. That doesn't mean much. This wall is close to you. So the Alter Rebbe meant to say that he's writing a whole Tanya to tell us that the Torah is like a wall as close to you, Begashmis. Obviously, it doesn't mean physical closeness. Because you could be physically close to something and not necessarily relate to it. We're physically close to many things that we don't relate to. You could sometimes be sitting near someone you don't want to even sit near. And you could have someone else you want to sit near who's 1,000 miles away. So I asked the Rebbe this question. I said, can we translate the word Korev as relevant? Relevant has a whole different meaning. Relevant means that it's negeya to my life. That's relevant to me. There are things that are relevant to you, things that are not relevant to you. Like, for example, you're eating these chips right now, so they're relevant to you right this moment. Whatever. Either you enjoy them or you have nothing else to do. I'm not picking on you. I'm just wanted to give a living example of something. You know, there are things, if someone said to you, what's important to you? If it was up to you, that you did not what your parents are saying or what your anhola and the faculty, what would you do if it was up to you? So some people would say, I'd love to go shopping. Some people say, I'd love to watch a movie. Others would say, I like sports. Some people, I like to sleep as much as I can. Anybody in that category here? Okay, good. We don't need volunteers right here. So everybody has things that they would say if you were not told what to do, if you did not... You like to sleep? That's what you want to tell me?
No.
Oh. Talking about sleeping, right? So what are these things You think these things are relevant to you. They may be nonsense. If someone says it's really that important for you to go shopping, you say, look, it's not life and death, I just enjoy it. Some people enjoy traveling, some people like to go on vacation. Everybody has their things. The question is, how many people would say Yiddishkeit, Chassidus, that's number one on my list? I'm not going to go by show of hands if that would be number one. Most people would not say that's number one. Now, don't feel bad if you're not in that madrega, on that level, because that's how all of us are. And this is the essence of Basi L'Gani, the Maimer, that the Rebbe said, the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe was the last Maimer that was published. On that Shabbos Pasha Boy, every Shabbos the Rebbe would prepare a kuntras, a booklet of Maimorim. And for that Shabbos Yud Shevat, the Rebbe prepared this Basi L'Gani, our Rebbe, because he was the publisher. So he took Maimorim from the Frierdiker Rebbe that he said years back, and he published it for that Shabbos. Kemuven, the Frierdiker Rebbe was the one that chose it, the one that Rebbe agreed to it, but the Rebbe was the actual publisher. That Friday night, when they were learning the Maimer, they noticed that there was a Yud missing in Shlita. We say Kved Yushuz Amur Shlita. So it's Sheyichil Yom Teiv Maruchim. The word Yud, the Yud was missing. No one knew why, but next morning it became obvious because the Yomim, the days of the Frierdiker Rebbe, had come to an end in this world. And there were many other hints to the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing. But because this was the last Maimer that the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was published in the Frierdiker Rebbe, this became the first Maimer, and it became, you can say, the theme of all the Rebbe's leadership. Basi L'Gani Achei Sikal. What's the theme of the Maimer? There's 20 chapters in this Maimer, and every year the Rebbe would explain one of the chapters. What's the general theme of it? That the Eibishter created a world, a garden. And afterwards, Adam and Chava, because they ate from the tree of knowledge, they transgressed, they sinned, so the Eibishter sent them away from the garden. And the Shekhinah no longer was there present. And 7 generations of transgressions made the Shekhinah, made Hashem more distant from this world. And Avram Avinu reversed the process and began to bring the Shekhinah back. That's it. And 7th generation from Avram was Moshe Rabbeinu, and he consummated the process by building the Mishkan, also the Migdash V'Shachanti B'Seichem, the way it was originally in the Garden of Eden, in paradise. And then the rest of the Hemshech comes to all explain the idea, how do we regain the garden again? How do we rebuild from this world and turn it back into a garden? In simple English, it means, and I'm translating it to something that's relevant to all of us, that the Eibishter made it very difficult for a person to find ruchnius relevant to us. I go back to Karev Elecha, relevant. When you wake up in the morning, what you think about first is usually that you're hungry or you're tired. Very few people, if anybody, will say, my neshama is hungry and I want to have a mitzvah. I want to learn Torah. There are very, very few people you'll find like that. Now, why is that the way? Because that's the way the Eibishter made it. But the truth is, it's not even natural. If indeed the neshama survives and thrives and is nourished by ruchnius, so here's obvious klotzkasha. Just like your body tells you you're hungry, why doesn't your soul tell you that it's hungry? The answer is, as he explains in the Maimer, because ein adam ever avera elim kei nichnas by ruach shtus. Hashem made it difficult. He covered up. The interesting halacha that is very interesting, the Rebbe brings in a number of places. You learn the dinim of shemer, right? So shemer means someone who's a guardian, who watches over. What happens if you give a shemer chinam to watch over your behemoth, your animal? So of course he has responsibilities. If the animal damages something, or the animal gets damaged, the guardian, the guard, is responsible. What happens, the question is, if the animal jumps into a fire? Is the guard responsible? What do you think? The answer is not, because no normal animal will jump into fire. And this guard did not know this animal was crazy. The owner didn't say it, so he wasn't looking out for that. Normal things that an animal could do or could not do, that's what he cares for. So even an animal won't jump into fire. Would a normal human being put their hand in fire? Never. Why? Because fire burns and it's going to damage you. No normal person wants to hurt himself. If you see somebody put their hand in fire, you have to say that either they don't know it's fire, or they don't know that they get burned. That's why a newborn child, a young child, they have to watch, because the child doesn't know the danger of fire. So this is how the Rebbe explains this Basi L'Gani, the ruach shtus. When a person does a mitzvah, it's literally the same thing as you drinking water and eating food. Is anybody in any human body not going to want to eat or drink? If someone doesn't want to eat or drink, it's usually due to disease or illness. So a neshama needs mitzvahs and Torah just as much as a body needs food and drink. So how come a neshama doesn't feel it? Because ruach shtus, the Eibush to cover it up, that we do not see that it's nourishing for us. The same thing, the opposite. And Aveda is literally like putting your hand in fire. So how could a person do a sin? If a sin is like putting your hand in fire, no normal person would put their hand in fire. You have to say that we don't know. We don't feel it. There's a Gemara that says that all Eden are like one big body, one big organism. Is it possible, conceivable, that a right hand should hit the left hand? Never. So why did we hurt each other? Why are we able to bully each other? Why can we hurt each other? Why could we be nice to each other? If we're all part of one, because we don't feel it. If you felt it, you'd never, no way that you would hurt a part of yourself. You think one part of your body would hurt another part of the body. So essentially, the whole Basi L'Gani comes to, the first chapters teach us that there's a concealment Hashem made, what Chassidus calls a tzimtzum addition, a tzimtzum that conceals and covers up the effects of ruchnis in our lives. That's why the Alter Rebbe had to write a whole sefer called Tanya Karev Elecha, because initially it's not relevant to us. Relevant to us, as I said, what would most of you choose? Gashmizdika things. Food, drink, I mentioned shopping, sports, entertainment. Everybody has a list of things. You naturally do not go for ruchnizdika things. Even though, piseichel, if you think about it, what's the thing most relevant to a person in life? Things that are not temporary. I mean, how much food, how long does food last? You can like a food, but after a while it gets digested and that's it. And then you need another meal. Ruchnis, on the other hand, is the purpose of a person's life, is something that gives us the most important satisfaction. If someone were to say to you, would you rather have a lot of money but be a miserable person? Do you mind saying? Would you rather be a miserable person but have a lot of money, or be a happy person and not have so much money? How many of you would choose the first? Have a lot of money but be miserable? Nobody? There are some people, by the way, that would choose money and be miserable because they think with money I can then buy happiness. None of you thought of that, right? But if you had to say a question, have a healthy family, a loving family, and people are healthy, psychologically healthy, emotionally healthy, or an unhealthy family, God forbid, but with a lot of money. It's obvious. Now, of course, people would say, I want to have both. No problem. I'm just asking the question from a point of view. Why? Because everyone understands that money or food or entertainment are temporary things. They're enjoyable. And when you have to choose right now, you may choose the entertainment. You may choose temporary pleasure over long term. But anyone with a little intelligence knows things like love, things like health, things like truth, things like what God wants of you in your life are obviously much more karev elecha. But we don't feel it. That's the problem. Comes Chassidus, and it comes to teach us how you can learn to feel that elikus and godliness and purpose in life should be just as valuable and relevant to you as gashmizdika pleasures. Mittler Rebbe writes in one of his Kuntresim, Kuntres Pilas, he says the whole Alter Rebbe's whole objective was that people should be excited about ruchnis as much as they're excited about gashmis. Now you could say that's almost impossible, right? Most people would say that's impossible. I'd say this many times to Bocher, say it's impossible. How can you be excited about ruchnis and gashmis? I know that it's the right thing to do. I know it's important to go on Mivtzoyim, to do the Rebbe Shlichus, to help other people. But that should be as exciting to me as going and enjoying life. But that's what Chassidus does. It comes to teach you, yes, that those things can be just as exciting. So the Frierdiker Rebbe in Basi L'Gani and the Rebbe, every year explaining another chapter, continues to explain how we do this. How do we find the garden again that we have lost after the Chet Tzadas? And that's the whole Emshech. So I want to just touch upon one point, since this year is the seventh, corresponds to the seventh chapter. You're all familiar with that cycle? Or should I explain it? So the 20 chapters, every year the Rebbe would explain one of the chapters. So chapter 7 was explained by the Rebbe in 1957, in 1977. So now 2017 would be the fourth cycle of this 20 chapters. So what is the point in the chapter? Just one short Nakuda. Talks about the Yud. And when you make a letter Daled, the difference between a Daled and a Daled has a Yud at the back of the Daled, right? And a Reish is just two lines, And the Dalet is one more little dot. Now you could think, what's one big dot? What's a dot? Many people pick things, so it's a dot. But the difference between Dalet and Reish is the difference between life and death. What's the last word in Shema? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Imagine you take the Dalet of Echad and turn and instead say a Reish. What's the difference between Hashem Echad and Hashem Acher? It's not just a difference of two words. Hashem Echad means there's one God. Hashem Acher means Rachmana litzlan, Avodah Zarah. Lekim Acherim. False gods, other gods. So you see that little dot, one little dot changes the whole thing. Have you ever learned the difference between Chometz and Matzah? For example, Chometz and Matzah is exactly the same letters. Mem and Tzadik. And the only difference between Chometz and Matzah is a Hey or a Ches. What's the difference between a Hey and a Ches? Also, one little space. A Hey, the left leg is broken, and a Ches, the left leg connects to the top. So you could ask the question, what's the big thing? One little dot. So anyone knows computer programming knows that you could have millions of lines of computer programming, and you add a dot, or you take off a dot, what will happen? Will it make a difference? Yeah, the whole program won't work. You have millions and millions of lines, everything is working, because it doesn't matter the size. One dot can change everything. Same thing in the human body. Does anyone know how many cells are in the human body?
Billions.
What do you think? Take a guess. 75 trillion. Trillion. Not billion, but trillion. Okay? 75 trillion cells. If one cell, God forbid, is extra, or off, or missing, you could have, Rachmana litzlan, the worst physical handicaps or mental handicaps and so on. So a little dot makes a difference. So what does the dot represent? The chapter says, following last year's chapter, that the Yud represents Bittul. What is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet? A Yud, right? Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dal, these are all written out words. A Yud is just a dot. Dot represents Bittul. What is Bittul? Does anybody know what Bittul is? How would you translate Bittul? Bittul is misunderstood by many people. People think Bittul means that you're nobody. By chassidish farbrengens, you probably hear many times. I don't know if your mashpiyim tell this to you, but people tell you, look, who do you think you are? Big ego, you're a nobody. Bist a garnished. You ever hear anyone ever called you're a garnished? Huh? So I want to explain that there's a healthy bittul and there's an unhealthy bittul. That's what the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe explains in this and last chapter. What's unhealthy bittul? Unhealthy bittul is a person that has any low self-esteem. Anybody has low self-esteem? Low self-confidence. You feel like you're a shmata. You feel like you're worthless. Healthy bittul means you know that you have qualities, you know you're special, but you're not arrogant about it. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most bottled person, the biggest onov that ever walked on earth. Right? Now Moshe didn't know that he was chosen by Hashem to take the Idn out of Mitzrayim, to bring the Torah, Moshe Kibbutz Torah Sinai, to lead them through the wilderness. Moshe didn't know this. Nevertheless, he knew, but he said to himself that it's not due to my own gifts. Hashem gave them to me, and if Hashem gave it to someone else, they'd be even more special. Let me share with you a story. I remember when the Rebbe said the story, Tov Shemem Gimel Purim. It's a very interesting story. The Rebbe says, well, from the few times the Rebbe spoke about himself very openly. And he said the following. He said that from time to time, Vet Neseret Asofik, which means a doubt may rise, and the Rebbe is talking about himself, whether you're doing the right thing. The Rebbe said that he has a doubt about the fact that he makes a farbrengen, and all the chassidim come to the farbrengen. Maybe it's better that they all should stay home, and they should learn on their own. Why do they have to come here, one person speak? That's what the Rebbe said. He says, put him Tov Shemem Gimel. And the Rebbe says, how do you resolve this dilemma? So you ask the Rebbe. That's what the Rebbe said. He says, so there's a story with the Alter Rebbe, that for the Rebbe, that resolved his question. The Alter Rebbe was once at home. The Rebbe told the story. The Alter Rebbe was home, and suddenly he sees, from the window, he sees chassidim are coming to his house. They wanted to come to hear, want to farbrengen with the Rebbe. They want to hear Torah from the Rebbe. as he sees them coming, he says to his Rebbetzin, the Alter Rebbe says, what do they want from me? And he about to close the curtains and lock the door and not let anybody in. So the Rebbe said that the Rebbetzin, meaning the Alter Rebbe's Rebbetzin, Alter Rebbe Rebbetzin saw that she has to do something here. There should be a good, happy ending. So she told the Alter Rebbe, they're coming to hear what your Rebbe has to say. When the Alter Rebbe heard that, he said, "Oh, if that's the case, if that's the case, I'll say and say." And he opened the doors, and all the chassidim came in, and the Alter Rebbe Fabreng and told them Teiros from the Baal Shem Tov and so on. In other words, the Alter Rebbe, if they're coming to hear what I have to say, he wasn't interested. You're coming to hear what my Rebbe has to say, that's called bittul. So the Rebbe concluded, the Rebbe said that the Alter Rebbe said it mitzad bittul, anova, humility. But today we may not need that. The Rebbe was being humble himself. He says, the reason I fabring is because I was zeichet to hear things from my father-in-law, from the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe, and from the Rabbeim before. And therefore, I heard from my Rebbe, I'm not here saying my own things. This is bittul, that the Rebbe, a godel shebigdelim, a Talmud Chacham on the highest level, and a Rebbe, and no one has a doubt about that. People want to come and hear the Rebbe speak. And nevertheless, the Rebbe is saying that he's saying it because he's saying what his Rebbe said. This is called bittul. I just heard a story yesterday that the first few years, Pesach night, the Rebbe used to bring the second night of Pesach. So the Chassidim came and said, maybe the Rebbe could bring the first night too, and explain the Haggadah and so on. So the Rebbe said, if I speak the first night, I won't have what to say the second night. So the Rebbe speaking. So the Chassidim said that they're sure that the Rebbe will have what to say the first night and the second night. And the Rebbe ended up bringing. So it wasn't a joke. It's because the my Rebbe is bittul. The reason we connect Yud Shevat to Rebbe is not because the Rebbe is a great man. It's because the Rebbe is absolutely, completely invisible man. Means a transparent channel, because of his bittul, that we have an ability to connect to the Eibishter. Because we all know we don't believe in intermediaries. I think that was one of the questions, which I'm going to go to right now. So when someone asks the question, what's the connection to Rebbe? Why should we connect to Rebbe? Connect to the Eibishter, to Hashem. The answer is, why do we need a Moshe Rabbeinu? Not because, of course we're connecting to Hashem. The Rebbe does not get in the way, but the Rebbe, because his ego is not there, there's nothing selfish, it's all selfless, it's utter bittul, so the Rebbe is not standing in between. On the contrary, the Rebbe is an example for us how to connect to something greater than yourself. Each of us has a nice ego, we're arrogant, we have our own selfish interests. You look at the Rebbe, you see a person who's completely dedicated, not to himself. There's not 1 second of the Rebbe's day, if you study his life, where he was dedicated to himself. Literally not 1 second. I mean, I was a personal witness to this. I once told a journalist who asked me a question, he said to me, so what, the Rebbe had a private life? I said, not that I know of. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that if you want to know what did the Rebbe do Tuesday afternoon, let's say on February 5th in 1958, you can know exactly what he was doing. Can you imagine? Most people don't even know what they did last week. Most people don't even want to know what they did last week. Here's a man that you could say exactly what time of the day, you know exactly where he was. If it was 3 o'clock 3:15 in the afternoon, he was davening mincha. If it was 3:30, he was in his room. If it was 7 o'clock, meaning that so imagine a person, literally, I'm not even talking now, not Chai Madregas and Tzaddikim and all that. Pasha Begashmis, a person that you knew exactly where he was 24/7. You know anyone on earth that way? Everybody has their little secret moments and private places. Just to show an example. So when you connect to a person like that, you're not connecting to him, you're connecting to what he's connected to. Because he's himself nobody. Like the Rebbe said, I'm not saying what I'm saying what my Rebbe said. Even the Alter Rebbe said that. So the idea of a Rebbe is the idea of bittul, and it teaches us what bittul is. Why do you think there are thousands of shluchim today? Not because they're so great tzaddikim, but so they saw the Rebbe. They saw someone so dedicated to the cause that it made them dedicated. You get inspired by that. So that's the general gist of it. So today, 67 years later, we honor that day the Rebbe assumed leadership. And for a year the Rebbe refused. Not because he was being tough or playing hard to get, God forbid. It was because the Rebbe Be'etzim didn't feel he was worthy. In a letter, the Rebbe writes, someone to be a Rebbe, they have to be b'shleimus and nefesh ruach neshama and the keiches gluyim and the keiches nalomim and the keiches hiyulim. So the Rebbe understood what a Rebbe was. And of course the Chassidim told the Rebbe, that's exactly who we want. We want someone who doesn't want the job. What happened with Moshe Rabbeinu in Parsha Shmeis that we just read a few weeks ago? And Hashem says to him, I want you to be my shliach. What does he tell the Eibishter? Not me. What do you want from me? Go to Aaron, Shnachna b'yat Tishlach, go to Mashiach. Every teretz. I can't speak. Every teretz. Now the Eibishter himself is choosing him. So what do you think the Eibishter says to him? I don't want someone who wants the job. I want someone who doesn't want the job. I don't want someone who's looking for godless, for greatness. I want someone who's bottle. And the more he resisted, the more it was a sign that he's the right one. Someone who wants the job is usually not a good sign. It's the same thing with the Rebbe. Just like Moshe refused. But then finally they say, I don't have an original source, but I heard that the Rebbetzin told the Rebbe, what's going to be with all the work of my father, Friedrich Rebbe, and all the work of my grandfather, if you don't assume leadership? Because Chmon al would just end right there and then. I'll take questions at the end here. So I'm going to do now is let me just sum this up. I'm going to then go and answer the questions that you sent in. If you have more questions, I'll be happy to take them. So, B'kitz, I wanted to sum up this. So it's not just another day in the year. Yud Shevat is a day when we connect to the Rebbe, assuming the Nesius, the leadership. And it's not just a nice day of leadership. It's not like an inauguration. On the contrary, it's a day when the bittul of the Rebbe became our bittul. That the Rebbe's bittul became an example that the Rebbe gave away his personal life. If you ever hear the Basi L'Gani, the first one, Tafshin Yud Aleph, any of you ever hear the tape? At the end, the Rebbe cries very strongly. And you can see he's crying over what's going on. He says, Seder Ashvi. He says, we didn't earn it. We didn't do the Aveda for it. But that's the Mitzvah, that we're the Der Ashvi. And therefore, we have to do what has to be done. If you think between the lines, what the Rebbe was saying was basically, he was moving over from being a private citizen to becoming a Rebbe. The Rebbe's preference would have been to sit and learn privately, quietly. Many times in Fabrengens, I heard this straight from the Rebbe said that my Shver had a chush for Askonos Tziburis. Meaning the Friedrich Rebbe had a chush, how do you translate chush? Had a knack for Askonos Tzibur, for public service. The Rebbe said, I'm not that person. The Rebbe, you see, was very private, would have wanted to learn all the time. The 10 years that he was in America before he became Rebbe, very few people really knew who he was, what's going. He was quiet, very quiet, reserved. But the Rebbe realized the Mesiras Nefesh is necessary, as difficult as it may be, that he's going to have to now deal with a whole bunch of, I don't want to use any derogatory terms, but a bunch of people who, let's say, mediocre people. So the Rebbe was Mesiras Nefesh to be leader because we need one. So today's 67 years from that day. So our job is to connect. And you connect today, obviously, through the Torah of the Rebbe and through the Rebbe's directives. And the Yud of this chapter in Perek Zayin, the Yud behind the Dalet, on the end of the Dalet, which is connected to Yud Shevat, is also a Yud. And Tofshin Yud. Friedrich Rebbe's two names are Yosef Yitzchak, two Yud. Everything Yud. Are you aware, for example, that the last year, the Friedrich Rebbe signing his name, so the Yitzchak of his name, the Yud of Yitzchak, you see, we have today images of the copies of those letters, and the Yud gets larger and larger and larger. So the Yud Tofshin Tes of Yitzchak is just a line. By the time the last letter, I think, is the day before Yud Shevat, it's literally like a square, Yud Ribua, like you'd write in a Sefer Torah. And you could see the progression. Someone asked the Rebbe once, what's the meaning? The Rebbe said, I didn't hear a meaning. But years later, the Rebbe explained in the Fabrengen that the essence of the Friedrich Rebbe's Nesius was all Yuds. His Anasi for 30 years, 3 Yuds, 10, 10, 10. His names are 2 Yuds, Yud Shevat, Tofshin Yud. And as I said, in the Basi L'Gani, you see the Yud is a very prominent theme, and especially in these chapters 6, 7, 8. So Yud is the concept of bittul. Bittul means you're nothing of your own, you're only a channel for something greater than you are. So actually bittul is the secret to greatness. Because as great as you are, you're only that great. When you're great, you're dedicated to something greater than you are, then you become an extension of that. So that's what this day is about. Reconnecting to that and making halchotas and learning the Torah and bringing it into action. So the first question was, how do I make Yud Shevat meaningful? Perfect segue. That's how you make it meaningful. You don't just sit in Fabreng. You say into your own heart, you think about it in your own heart and soul, and say, what does it mean for me to be a chassid? What does it mean for me to be a chassid of the Rebbe's? And how does it translate in your life? You're at an age where you will soon be making big decisions in your life. You get out of Yeshiva, what are you going to do with your life? Are you going to sell cell phones on the internet? Or are you going to be a shliach of the Rebbe's to fulfill his ratzon? The Rebbe said once to my shver, it was his birthday, the Rebbe said to him an expression which was very powerful. He said to him, it was his birthday, so he said to him, the Eibishter will help him. The Eibishter should help. That part of the things that the Rebbe wanted to fulfill in this world should be fulfilled through you. That's what you should have to think about Yud Shevat. How are you going to help fulfill part of what the Rebbe gave us the mission to fulfill in this world? That's the Yud Shevat message. And there's nothing greater in this world. There's 7 billion people on this planet. Right? There are 14 million Eden, Jews. And unfortunately, most people simply do not know what their mission is in life. You ask a person, what's your mission? You ever hear the expression, a mission statement? A mission statement? A mission statement is a mission, a purpose. Everything has to have a purpose. Every company has to have a purpose. We were blessed, thank God, that Rebbe told us that our shlichus is Basi L'Gani Deir Ashvi, to bring the Shekhinah down back to earth, with bringing Mashiach through your futzah and sechel chutza. So Yud Shevat has to be a day where you connect to that mission of how can I use my talents and my skills and what I was blessed with to fulfill.
POP, personality.
Yeah, but since they don't know that, you know that. Not everybody here knows that. Okay. Yeah. So that's Yud Shevat. And the more meaningful it becomes meaningful when you connect to that idea. So you have to ask yourself, the question is, what does the Rebbe mean to me? What does the Eibishter Shlichus mean to me? The fact that you're here on earth means that you were sent here on a purpose. That's how I would answer that question. And following everything else that I said earlier. What should I take out of this trip? Okay, what trip are we talking about here? People are here, I don't even know who I'm talking to be honest. I should have asked that earlier. I know I see a bunch of good Jewish boys. This group is from where?
Pittsburgh.
Everybody here's from Pittsburgh?
No, I'm from Pittsburgh, learning.
Oh, learning in Pittsburgh. But everybody from Pittsburgh? Yeah. Okay, fine. So what should I take out of this trip? I guess the trip you mean the trip coming from Pittsburgh to here, right? So when are you here?
Tonight.
Till tonight. You're with this group? How many are there?
36.
36. Okay. Now most of you come from where? Where are your original places? You're not Pittsburgh locals, right? Huh? Some are from Pittsburgh?
No, like half out of Pados, half local Pittsburgh.
Okay, fine, got it. Look, did you visit? What did you visit so far? You were at the oil. Rebbe's house. What else? Huh? 77.
Rebbe's
Okay. So let me tell you what I think you should take from this trip. What's the age? What's the average age here?
15 to 17.
Let me tell you this. I am now a little older than you are. However, I remember very vividly when I was your age. So I want to share something that happened to me when I was your age, which I think can help us understand how you could take something from this trip that may help you. You ever hear the expression, a rebel without a cause? You heard this expression? Never, huh? Okay. So I was a pretty rebellious kid myself. And, I never got expelled from school directly. I let others get expelled, but I was like, on the line. And I remember hearing then a sikha from the Rebbe. Because I was wondering, I had a lot of questions in my mind. One of the questions I had was, I saw a lot of people around me in Yeshiva. I grew up here in Crown Heights. I went to Yeshiva here and everything. I don't know how different it is than your Yeshiva system, but probably quite similar in many ways. And I wasn't, to be honest, very impressed with everything I saw. I didn't speak about it so much, but I used to think about it. First of all, I saw a lot of mediocrity. You know that word, mediocrity? Okay. Number two, I saw a lot of conformity. Do you know that word? Yeah? Only one guy knows the word. What's conformity? Conformity means that everybody does the same thing without thinking about it, like robots, machines. And I always used to think to myself, what is this whole Yiddishkeit, Chassidus? Is it some type of mind control thing, like a program that's just getting everybody just to keep them under control? And around me, I did see some people that it seemed to me that way. The Rebbe was a king on the hill, so to speak. I was not someone that was hurt by the system, so it wasn't like I was disappointed. I just never, I never got disappointed in it because I never trusted it in the first place, so you can't get disappointed. But I used to wonder about these things, and then I remember once hearing the Rebbe speak, and he spoke about young people. He spoke about that, the rebellion in young people, and said the following. He said that many adults think that when you see a young person rebel, that means it's a bad thing, because they're breaking rules, and they're going against the establishment, and they're restless, and they are disruptive, etc., etc. So the Rebbe said that's a big mistake. The rebellion in young people, the Rebbe said, comes from the fire inside the neshama, the fire inside the soul, that wants to change the world in some way and doesn't know how. It's frustrated. And looks around at an adult world that's all very conformist and very accepting of the status quo, and the young spirit wants to change the world, and it's frustrated. So the Rebbe said, for adults, the good thing to do is either get out of the way if you can't help, or help cultivate, help harness. That's the word that Rebbe used in Yiddish. Help harness this fire toward constructive ends, toward a spiritual revolution. Toward a spiritual revolution. That was more or less the gist of what the Rebbe said. I remember it struck me very deeply because it was exactly what I was thinking about. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you know my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, but if you read, there's a chapter there, Youth, where I write up these sikhs because these were very close to my heart, and I thought it's a very good way to capture what the youth are from the Rebbe's point of view. I'll tell you something even more. You've heard of a singer called Matis Yael? Okay. So he has an album called Youth, right? If you look on the album, you'll see where he credits, where did he get the name from, and where he took the ideas from. He sat with me for hours. He wanted to study all the sikhs of the Rebbe on the issue of youth. And he wrote a song called Youth and called the whole album Youth because of this chapter on youth based on the Rebbe's talks. And I could tell you, people, even non-Jews, who've read this chapter and have heard the song and so on, are very taken because you don't have spiritual leaders, especially a religious Rebbe, talking about the rebellion of youth in such a positive way. So I want to say what you can get away from coming from here to your trip here. You may see a lot of things. There's a nice, good kosher pizza shop across the street here. There are all kinds of interesting physical things in Crown Heights. But the most important thing is this is a place that spawned and gave birth to revolution. The Rebbe was a revolutionary above all. Yes, dressed in Hasidic garb, obviously following Torah, but the most important point was revolution, to change the world in a revolutionary way. And for that matter, I would say not only the Rebbe, Avraham Avinu, Moshe Rabbeinu, these were all pioneers. And I always say to myself, I don't want to compare it, lahavdil, people talk Steve Jobs was a pioneer. He created the technology of smartphones and all the intuitive elements of modern technology. Others, they say, the real pioneers, the real leaders of Yidden were all revolutionaries. I don't know when it became a system of conformity, and here's not the place to go into it. But remember this, you come into this trip here, you can connect. If you can, let's call it plug in to the electricity of this place, this is a place where the Rebbe for years upon years gave birth to revolution, taught people how to be revolutionaries, and empowered people. Shluchim, not all of them, frankly, are all on their own revolutionary spirits. But because they're bottled to the Rebbe, they just listened to what the Rebbe said, and they went out to cities that had nothing going on for them, and turned it into empires. I traveled the world many times. I've seen many, many cities. There are places, I can tell you, no one in their life would have expected there'd be success there. My own daughter lives in a city called Redondo Beach. Just give you that example. It's south of Los Angeles. The shliach there is Rabbi Yossi Mintz. Just to give you a record, my daughter is married to Basi Marcus from 8th Day, in case you want to have, now you may have a newfound respect for me. Okay. So he's the guitarist. Him and his brother Shmuley, that's 8th Day. What?
He came to Pittsburgh.
Okay, good. So that's my son-in-law. I'm not taking credit for him. He was a musician before I met him, but he happens to be my son. Fine. They live in Redondo Beach. So Rabbi Mintz tells me that he was looking for a shlichus, and he was living in California at the time, working with his father-in-law. So he asked Rabbi Kunin, he once drove by, he sees Redondo Beach. It says Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach. So Rabbi Kunin says, keep it. It's a desert. There are no Jews there. There's no money there. It's a wilderness. But get permission from Rabbi Hecht, who's in Torrance, the next city south. Okay. He goes to Rabbi Hecht, tells him exactly the same thing. There's no money there. There's nothing there. You go there and you tell me now. It's probably maybe one of the most successful shlichus in the world. He built the whole empire. He got a shul, and then suddenly Jews started coming out of the woodwork, and there are millionaires there, if not billionaires. And he's now the envy of many. Mamash, a place no one would have thought. It's like a place someone's going to say, you're going to dig for oil on Kingston Avenue. Right? You go to Saudi Arabia for digging for oil. So he found oil there. And he's not the only one. My point is that the Rebbe saw a revolution everywhere. So you're coming here, this is what I suggest you take from this trip. That you can take the energy of really achieving, listen to this. Nothing is impossible. Achieving the impossible. You tell me, 10 years from now, when you become successful in whatever area in life you'll be successful, I'd like you to contact me. I plan to be around. And let me know if you've achieved the impossible. Never think anything is impossible. If anyone tells you, no, it's not possible, you can't do it, do not accept that. Everything is possible. That's what the Rebbe taught us. That's what you have to take away from this trip. And above all, obviously, to connect it to something that the Rebbe wanted us to do, which is to change the world for the better. Through Torah, through Chassidus, through Tzedakah, through justice, virtue, and so on. So that's my answer to that question. Next. How can I be chassidish, but with it? Well, let me put it this way. I guess the person who asked this question means that chassidish is very nerdy and square and so on. My translation of chassidish would be cool, hip, with it, cutting edge, revolutionary. So from my point of view, the more chassidish you are, the more with it you are. So maybe you hang around with the wrong chassidish people who think chassidish means to be very, what do you call it, fachnocht? How would you translate that? Far what? You get the idea. Huh? Chassidishkeit is about a free spirit. You know what chassidim were known for? Exuberance, joy, dancing, singing. Would you call that not with it? I mean, the whole idea of soul and music, where do you think that comes from? That comes from Chassidish and Nigunim. That's the whole point of Chassidus, which is all about the free spiritness. Unfortunately, there are people who themselves are very verkvetched. Verkvetched would mean very down. And that's why whoever asked this question probably assumes Chassidishkeit is that. So I suggest to you a different translation of Chassidishkeit and finding people who are very with it and very hip and very unique in that sense. Okay? Got my point? What does it mean to bring down the Shekhinah practically? Okay, I think I answered that earlier, but I'll just sum it up again. Shekhinah is a Hebrew word, and frankly, most Hebrew words, most of us have no clue what they really mean. It's just a word. Shekhinah, I'll tell you a little short story. I don't know if this resonates with you or not, but I give a class every week in Manhattan, and the people that come to the class are not traditional Jews. They're Jewish, they're spiritual, but they're not religious in the sense, and maybe that's not a good word to use because we don't know who's religious. But they're not, on the outside, seem shemer Torah mitzvahs. Now, many of them have issues even with God. Many of them say, I don't know if there's a God, maybe there is, maybe there's not, with Torah. So I decided to once speak to them, not use any religious terms, not Shekhinah, not God, not Torah, not mitzvahs. Instead, I used words like this. Instead of God, I used the word higher reality, or the essence of reality. If it was a new age group, I would speak like a language of unconscious layers of undefined energy or something like that. Instead of words like Torah, I use the word blueprint. Instead of mitzvahs, connections. Instead of Mashiach, destination. So here I was waxing eloquent about connecting to the essence of all reality through this blueprint and creating and making connections that create a fusion between the inner and the outer and the higher and the lower, and ultimately a fusion between form and function, between soul and body, and so on. A few weeks, and everybody was really very intrigued. A few weeks passed, and one guy came over to me. He was actually a singer in a band called, a group, that was a big rock group in the 60s. They were called the Jay and the Americans. And he asked me, he says to me, are you talking about God? So I said, yes, but shh, don't spoil it for the others. You know? So what happened was, it's all about language. The word Shechina is a meaningless word, frankly. What does it mean? So let's talk in simple English. I said before that we have two types of desires. The things we like: eating, sleeping, shopping, entertainment, sports. The list goes on. You know, everything that people enjoy. I would call it in one category. That's called, what Chassidus calls gashmis, or chumius, gashmis. Then there's another thing. We all have transcendent needs. What are transcendent needs? Things like love, nurturing, friendships, truth, purpose. That would be called ruchnius. So when you say the Shekhinah is revealed, you're saying that ruchnius, that the spiritual needs are revealed in this material world. That was the way it was in Basi L'Gani in the beginning. The Ikar Shekhinah b'tachtein emayis. When you say the Shekhinah is concealed, you're basically saying Gashmius is revealed, and it's very hard to find and access ruchnius. You need work. So in simple English, Shekhinah in a revealed way on earth means that we're connected with our transcendental and spiritual needs, not just our material needs. And a Shekhinah concealed means you're connected more with your material needs than your spiritual needs. That's how I would explain that. We have two more. Two more. And then if anybody wants to ask questions here from the floor, I'll be happy. What's in it for me to be a chassidish Bocher? Oh, here I have an opportunity. This is the moment for a sponsor. Anybody would like to make $10,000? Then something's in it for you? Yeah? Yeah. If you write an essay in the next few weeks, an essay, it means like an article, and you take an idea in Yechidus and make it practical. Talk about, let's say you have a problem or a challenge, or you have friends or others that have a challenge, and take an idea in Yechidus. You can win $10,000 first prize. That's what's in it for you. I like that. Good connection, right? Now, I happen to be the one that initiated this contest, so even though I'm not a judge, but if you go to meaningfullife.com/contest, you get all the rules and the guidelines. We already have two years. This is the third year this contest is taking place, so there's already two people who've won.
Will be hanging in Yeshiva next week.
Okay, good. So there you go. What do you think? Is that not in it for you? So you can have Chassidus and $10,000. Now, if you don't want the money, you can return it and just have the Chassidus. But just in case, you could also have the money. So that's number one, what's in it for you. Number two, I think this goes back to what I said before, what a chassidish Bocher is, what chassidish is. I think many of you may have the wrong impression of what chassidish is. You think chassidish is something that's like a burden, that's like that makes you puts responsibilities on you. So I want to share a parable that I shared once with someone in a place. The nightingale is a bird that has a beautiful voice. The nightingale comes to Hashem and says, "Thank you for giving me a beautiful voice, but I have a problem. The problem is, I may be perched on a branch one dusk, serenading into the night, and everybody enjoying my melodies, but a predator, an animal looking for a good dinner, will be attracted to me, a good piece of meat for dinner. So Hashem, please give me rather, a weapon to protect myself from enemies." So Hashem offered the bird a beak. You know what a beak? A sharp nose. It's like a razor sharp nose. That's a way to protect. Many birds have that, to protect them from predators, from enemies. The bird looked at the nose and said, "A beautiful bird like me with a nose like that? No." Rejected the nose. So then God offered the bird claws. You know claws? Sharp claws? It's another form of defense. And the bird also rejected that. So then Hashem said to the bird, "Let me give you wings." Wings. The bird looked at the wings, never saw wings before, and the bird said, "I don't understand. You're the master of the universe. You created the world with such design. Beautiful design. I have enough dead weight, body weight with me, to run away from my enemies. You give me 2 extra pieces of weight, it's just going to weigh me down more." Now what was the bird's mistake? It obviously didn't know what wings were. So Hashem says to the bird, "Listen, bird, little bird, When you learn to use these wings, you can fly to places that you can never reach on your own, and you can soar away and escape any enemy. So here's the analogy. Torah mitzvahs, chassidish, on the surface level, to the naked eye, could appear like a lot of burdens. Look what Torah demands of us. Everything. How you wake up or how you go to sleep. Even how you cut your nails. Look at the laws of Shabbos, of kashrus. What we eat. What we don't eat. Pesach. So someone can say, what do I need so much body weight? What do I need all these things? I understand certain basic things in Yiddishkeit. Be charitable. Be compassionate. Be kind. Ahavas Yisrael. Visit the sick. Those make sense. But all these details, kids turn on a switch on Shabbos or not. So on the surface level, it looks like a lot of weight. But now let's think about the other side of it. What happens if you also find out this extra weight happens to be wings that can help you fly to places you can never reach on your own? Any of you taken music lessons? Anybody here has ever taken music lessons? So when you're young, you don't like. No one likes to sit in music lessons. It's a pain in the butt. Why? Because you're sitting and a teacher's making you crazy again and again and again. You ever see a sheet of music? If you don't know how to read music, you look at a sheet of music, it looks like a bunch of gibberish, like meaningless. You say, what do I need to read this? What do I need to struggle with this? Then suddenly someone sits down at a piano or takes a violin in hand, they start playing, and you see they're reading the notes. You say, those notes? Yeah, they're suddenly magic. And we all know what music can do. It takes you to another time and place, right? No one would say that musical lessons then is not worth it. Yes, it's a burden. Absolutely. It's hard to learn to play music. There's a system, there's a discipline, and it takes years to master an instrument really well. And you can always have it. You never stop. Anyone that plays music well knows it's a lifetime of constantly practicing and constantly retraining. I'm sure some of you like sports, football, and so on, right? You think someone starts playing sports well. It takes years of conditioning and years of training and playing again and again and again. That's a big burden. People work very hard. I mean, when you watch sports, it doesn't take much. All you got to do is sit on a couch and drink beer and watch a game. But when you play sports, it takes a lot of burden, But it's worth it because the results are worth it. So here's what I want to say about chassidish, the same thing. The impression that many of you, or whoever's asking these questions, is that chassidish is this type of burden. Who needs it? But if you suddenly saw that it can lead you to have wings, and to play music, and to soar and fly to places you can never reach on your own, you could suddenly realize it's the coolest thing on earth. The Rebbe once gave an analogy. If someone offered you 100 pounds of stones, if you carry it from here to here, the stones belong to you. Who would want it? Who needs to schlep stones? What happens if someone offered you 100 pounds of diamonds? What would you say? You'd say, give me 200 pounds. Now 100 pounds of diamonds don't weigh less than 100 pounds of stones. But you don't care about the weight because the value overshadows the weight. So that's the challenge. How can you look at chassidish and chassidus and see the diamonds and see the wings and see the flowers and see the music in it? So that's my response. What it means, what's in it for you? What's in it for you? Chassidus can help you actualize and realize your greatest dreams and aspirations and to become the greatest that you can become. Is that good enough? I think it's pretty worth it. You could say, I don't know how to find an Yechidus. That's a legitimate question. But it's there. I guarantee you it's there, so you have to find someone that can help you find it. And that's where you have your mashpiyim and teachers, and if one doesn't find it for you, go to the next one. You'll find it if you look for it. Don't give up.
MyLife is applied videos.
Okay? That helps. Yeah. So again, $10,000, and anybody can win. We especially made the guidelines. So far the winners have not been the biggest understanders of Chassidus and not the best writers. People, regular people that can do it. So then you could have someone help you. I think it's a worthwhile project. No? Maybe you should offer, help them. And split the price. I think that's against the guidelines, but don't say that I told you that. No one's going to know.
I did it once.
Okay. So listen, $10,000, $3,600 prize too. Second prize, and third prize is $1,000. I think it's a worthwhile effort. Why not? The worst scenario is you did something good. The best, you may win. And then you become world famous. They'll send you on a tour. Okay. Practically, how do I have a real connection with the Rebbe after Gimel Tammuz? Okay, I alluded to this before as well. I think I actually said it specifically. Unfortunately, we can't have a Gashmizdika connection. But let me tell you something. Even when the Rebbe was here, Begashmias, physically, I could speak for someone who was there. I stood by hundreds of Fabrengens. As I told you, mentioned before, I had the privilege to write to the Rebbe every day, literally. The Rebbe edited. I have thousands of pages of the Rebbe's handwritten edits on the sichos I prepared. But I can tell you, the connection to the Rebbe is not a Gashmizdika one. Not today, and not 50 years ago, and not 30 years ago. The connection to the Rebbe was always through his Torah and through his teachings. Through his teachings and through his directives, I should say. Now, it's easier, obviously, you see a Rebbe in 770, you can go to Fabrengen, you could dance with him by Simchas Torah, or see him blow shofar, or the other things that Rebbe did. Obviously, it makes it easier. But it was always the connection was not to the physical. It was the connection to what the Rebbe stood for. So now it's a little more difficult, but it's still there because we have it all documented. Guaranteed, if you were able to learn a sikha from the Rebbe, a mimer from the Rebbe, and as I said, it helped you gain wings to fly to great places, you wouldn't have this question. Because then that's the relevance. That makes the Rebbe connected to you and you to the Rebbe. Because you're seeing how the teachings of the Rebbe are helping you become the best you can be. Helping you fulfill the mission for which Hashem sent you to this earth. So that's my short answer, obviously relying on things I said earlier. Now, with that, that's the questions that came in here. If somebody wants to ask a question or more than one here, let's go for it. If you don't have any questions, it's also fine, but anybody? Yeah.
How do I, when it comes to, learning learning the Rebbe's Torah or something, how do I picture myself as if I'm in Yechidus with the Rebbe? What mindset do I have? What do I need to do to accomplish that?
It's a good question. Everyone heard the question, I'll repeat it. How do you recreate being Yechidus with the Rebbe? What are you supposed to do today? I went to Yechidus to the Rebbe myself personally. At least 1, 2, 3, probably 7 times. For my bar mitzvah, a few times before my bar mitzvah with my parents, then for my bar mitzvah, and then after that 4 more years, my bar birthdays. Then if we went in until Tov Shalom Adalad, when you were birthday, you went in for your birthday. But then the Rebbe stopped that. After that, I never went Yechidus. I went, one more Yechidus I went before I got married. So even by us, even when we had the Rebbe Begashmis, we also didn't go to Yechidus every day. And to be very honest, and I say this even though it may be a little not a little controversial, I remember when I was going to Yechidus, when I was a kid, you go in, the Rebbe asked me questions. I remember for my bar mitzvah, the Rebbe asked me 13 questions, because bar mitzvah. The questions on the pilpul I was saying, fine. But I was a kid. When I started becoming a little more conscious of what's going on, I remember saying to myself, what am I going in to waste the Rebbe's time? I write over, my note to the Rebbe was what they told me what to write. I repeated what other people wrote. I stood there, I got the bracha from the Rebbe. I got the same bracha the year before. I didn't write anything real. I wrote be a blessed year, B'Teira, Aveda, Tefillah, whatever it is they told me to write. And lo and behold, that year, Chayel Tov Shalom Adalad, when I turned 17, and I didn't turn that day, but I mean that year, that's what the Rebbe says by the Fabrengen. He says he's stopping Yechidus for birthdays. He says, because I see every year the same birthday boy, the same face, he writes the same thing, I give him the same brachas, so what's the point? So Yechidus, even when we physically went in, we didn't really go into Yechidus. We went in and I felt I wasted the Rebbe's time, to be honest. So even then, and now when I learned what Yechidus is, I realized why some chassidim took 6 months, some went 2 years before they went into Yechidus. So I would say that the way you prepare for it is exactly how we would have prepared back then. It takes a spiritual type of preparation. That means that a person, let's say, is really serious about communicating with the Rebbe. You have to learn something that the Rebbe wants of you. Commit an action that I'm going to do something that I haven't done till now in areas that the Rebbe wants of us. And then I guarantee you, if you do that seriously, you'll have your Yechidus with the Rebbe. Because Yechidus doesn't mean a physical Yechidus that you have to see the Rebbe. It's not like looking at the Rebbe's picture or a video. That's not Yechidus. It's a good thing to see. Yechidus is a personal, intimate thing. You may have learned this, that Yechidus comes from the word Yechida, When you went to the Yechidus, you went the Yechida of your neshama, went to the Yechida of the Rebbe's neshama, and it connected. And that is absolutely doable today, just as it was always. So it's not a physical thing at all. It's about really preparing yourself. And I have no question in my mind that if you did what I said, and then said, I want to meet the Rebbe, I want the Rebbe to come to me, or I come to the Rebbe, and I want the Rebbe to answer to my prayers or my questions, I guarantee you'll have some form of Yechidus. Now, to do it properly, you probably want to talk to Mashpia and in more details. What should be the right thing for you to do? But that's how it is. You meet the Rebbe halfway. If you prepare and say to the Rebbe, I'm ready to do what you want from me, now I want you to come and tell me, guaranteed you'll get an answer. That's what I am. How that answer will come, the Rebbe will find a way. It can come many different ways. It could be in the Rebbe's room, it could be at the oil, it could be in the middle of davening, it could be when you're in a taxi and the cab driver says something to you. I don't know if recently I saw a note, a woman asked the Rebbe, how do I know what Hashem wants from me? And the Rebbe answered, Hashem speaks straight to your neshama, and from there come your achlotas tevis. That when you have a good resolution, it's coming from the neshama that Hashem is speaking to. That's how I would answer that question. Okay, next, yeah.
How do you know if somebody is the right mashpia for you?
Well, I don't want to insult the mashpim that you have right now. Let me speak about it more in general terms. The Rebbe told a Bocher who was in Yechidus once. He was a wild Bocher. He was in Yeshiva, and the Rebbe and he was not listening to anybody. And he told the Rebbe, "I'm a wild guy. I need a bracha from the Rebbe to calm me down a bit." So the Rebbe said to him the following. He said, when the Rebbeim set up the yeshiva system, they set up yeshiva, there should be always more than one mashpia in yeshiva. And the different mashpiim should have different personalities. Because since Bochum have different needs. The Rebbe is saying this. He says, so choose yourself a mashpia that you can trust and relate to. But once you do, listen to what he has to say. So, in answer to your question, I think is a combination of a few things to find a good mashpia. And it may not be easy, always. One is...
Does your mashpia have to know you?
I'm going to answer that. Yeah. I think the few criteria are the following. I think the first and most important thing is trust. Someone you trust. If you feel it's someone that is judging you or is not confidential or you don't feel comfortable with, that's most likely not going to be a good mashpia for you. Now, when I say trust, I don't mean that the guy has to be perfect. It means that the person is someone that you feel is sensitive to your discussions with that person. They care about you. They care about you. The second thing is someone that really you feel that you can get guidelines. Like if you have a question, someone will give you an answer that speaks to you. You know, so much people start talking to you about Yechidus and Atzilus, and you say, I don't know what you're talking about. So some mashpia is not in touch with what you need. So mashpia who has some understanding of that. Now, answering the question, it's always good to have a mashpia that knows you somewhat. But there are people who are very good mashpiyim who may not know someone personally, but they've been around, so they have experience. I also tell people that, you know something, sometimes some mashpiyim work very well for certain areas of your life and other mashpiyim for other areas. Not all mashpiyim are good at psychological issues, for example, emotional issues. Others are very good for, let's say, chassidish guidelines, and they're a good chassidish role model.
So it's fine to have too much people.
It's better not. It's better to have one because it just makes it simpler. But if it's not working, it's better than nothing. It's like to have a specialist, like a doctor specialist and a dentist, and another one's a cardiologist. I don't know, whatever. But best is, look, you're yeshiva. So in yeshiva, you have mashpiyim in the yeshiva. If those mashpiyim don't speak to you for whatever reason, you can't relate to them, and you don't want to insult them, you have to find a way to talk to somebody outside of the system. But I would always begin with what you have around you. And I'm sure that the mashpiyim in your yeshiva are competent, and if they're humble, they'll also tell you, I may not be able to help you in this area, maybe I can suggest someone else. I think, again, to sum up, you need trust, care, and some insight that you relate to. You know that they're speaking to you in a way that relates to you. They're not speaking to you from a level like from the mountain, from an ivory tower that doesn't relate. Those are the three things I would say. I mean, there's more criteria, but those are the few things.
This is more of a sensitive question, but I think that a lot of people can relate to it, especially in today's age. On one foot, what can you tell a Bocher who's struggling with looking at non-appropriate things on the internet?
Look, everybody has what's called a sexual identity, and therefore is going to be, if you're a normal person, you're going to be attracted to the opposite gender. That's the way Hashem created us. So let's not deny that. That's a fact. There's two things I would say that are very vital. You have to remember that the sexual part of a person is not bad. Hashem created that. Hashem created it because Hashem wanted that when the day comes, that each of you will meet your Mitzvah Hashem, your soulmate, and build a beautiful family. And I think it's important to focus on the positive and not on the negative. You know, so much about sexuality is identified with the negative, like shame and guilt, and that every time you do this, you kill 1,000 neshamas or 1,000 angels, you know, things like that. And I think what it creates is much more negativity, and people feel very bad about themselves, and it doesn't usually help anyway. So I think when it comes to any of these, that whole area of temptations or the online internet, I'm just broadening it to everything. I think it's the positive chassidish ways to understand, just like God gave you eyes and ears, and God gave you arms and legs, and you're not going to go use them for something which is destructive, right? You're not going to go with your hands and start hitting people. So the same thing as the sexuality of a person is a sacred part of who you are, a holy part, that was given to you, for the day will come when you will be able to build a family. Then the day to be able to be together intimately, yes, sexually, with a beautiful wife, when the day will come, and then be able to be a beautiful family. So you have to say to yourself, am I ready to right now, so to speak, use this part of myself, and I'm not even talking about if you act on it, even the internet, whether it's visually or other things that stimulate a person. You know, it's like taking something that's given to you as a gift and using it for something that's just maybe gives you momentary pleasure, but really doesn't give anything long term. That would be the approach I would take in general. Now, is it going to always work? Not necessarily. You know, people sometimes have a taiva, and if it gets to a point of addiction where you really can't control yourself, then I think all addictions have to be addressed, just like somebody's addicted to alcohol. If someone's addicted to the internet, to porn, or whatever it may be. I mean, addiction is never good, because addiction means you're out of control. It means you can't control yourself. So there I would look more for either therapy or some type of someone to speak to, just how do you free yourself from addiction. So there's two parts here. There's the addiction part and there's the sexual part. I would distinguish between the two. Usually, unfortunately, one becomes an addiction once you do it too many times, and then you can't stop, so to speak. So I'm speaking very openly, even though many people don't speak about these things openly, because everybody knows what I'm talking about, so it's not like some big secret here. But I think it's important to know from a chassidish point of view is to really understand what love is, what marriage is, what souls are about, and what building a healthy family, you know. I can tell you something that I remember telling a Bocher, who told me he had challenges in this area. He was in Israel at the time, and he asked me, he said to me, I trust you, he was listening to some of my programs online. If you don't mind, I want to talk to you confidentially, and he shared with me some of his challenges. And it was connected to the internet and porn and stuff like that. So I said to him, look, it's very hard to tell someone who has a big taiva and a pleasure, the moment of pleasure, it's almost impossible. No, the seichel doesn't talk to you. Even if someone right that moment says, what are you going to get from this, besides momentary pleasure, does it really stop a person from doing it? So I said, I'm not going to tell you that. But I will tell you the following. You want to build something with your life, you want to build something long term, you do these areas usually get people into trouble. Because he already was going further. He was already beginning to have girlfriends and other stuff. And he said to me, what could happen? I said, what could happen? You can make a woman pregnant, that's what could happen. I was very blunt with him. He said to me, but I don't want to do that. I said, yeah, but how do you know what you're going to do? In other words, there are things you do and ends up having consequences you later cannot reverse. So you have to remember these things are not so small. In the beginning, it can just be a nice game. It can be just some pleasure, and you're just watching things and so on. But then things lead to things, and then comes a point where one day you look back and you say, this is something I cannot really change. Like I did something I wish I wouldn't have done. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone's going to go all the way. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying you're tampering with something which on one hand is very sacred and should really be reserved. That's one thing. The second thing the Rebbe says about all these matters is if your mind can be placed in things that are very productive. This to me is very vital. If any of you are in these things, if you could find something you're passionate about and excited about, for example, a guy I met a few months ago, similar issues. So I saw he was a graphic designer. He was very good at graphic design. He was very good at visualization of things. So I told him, why don't you start a website? Why don't you start a YouTube channel and do something? And he's turned it into a major success. And he thanks me because what happened was, instead of focusing on his on the stuff that he was doing that was wrong, he became so excited about good things. You can't be excited about two things at the same time. If you are right now busy with, let's say, doing something that really is a positive, productive project that you're excited about, it usually weakens your excitement. Because to be honest, most of these things happen when you're bored and when you like nothing to do. If you're not bored, you have something to do, generally speaking, the offense is the best defense, let's put it that way. So that's my second point that I would make. Now, is it going to be a perfect solution? I don't think so. But that's how you have to think about it. Finally, I would say is talk to someone about it. Don't just keep it to yourself. If you do have issues in this matter, find someone you can trust. Trust. I'm not saying someone you don't trust. Someone you can trust to talk about, because sometimes getting off your chest and talking about it helps a person grow and deal with the issues. And then you also almost feel like you have accountability to somebody. I just saw yesterday I was reading, I did MyLife, this applied last night. So someone sent me a story, which I found to be very interesting. It was Rabbi Beryl Baumgartner, the Rebbe Shliach to Argentina. So he was running a school. It's a very powerful story for Mechanchim. He's running a school when he was in New York before he went to Argentina. And one day, one Shabbos, the Zal, there was Bocher, and one Bocher went out, middle of learning, he went outside. Mid Shabbos day. He came back a little while later, you could smell that he smoked a cigarette. Now, so first Rabbi Baumgartner decided to ignore it, make believe, maybe I'm wrong, maybe, he didn't want to believe that. So he ignored it. But then he heard a few of the students saying, oh, you hear, the guy went for a smoke. So he realized he has to do something because the other Bochum were aware. And if he doesn't act on it, they'd say, okay, you know what, you can do anything. So he realized he has to do something. And he was ready to go and send that boy home, like a punishment. Especially the boy came from a very distinguished family, and everybody looked to him like a hero. So if nothing was done, it would be it wouldn't be a good precedent. But instead, before he decided to do that, you know what he decided to do? He decided to write to the Rebbe. Tell the Rebbe his plan. The Rebbe wrote to him 5 words. Ayin Oviz Drab Nosen, Pedik Gimel Mishneh Hey, I think. I may be wrong with the exact source. Actually, I have it somewhere. So the Rebbe's telling him to look in Oviz Drab Nosen, Pedik Gimel Mishneh Hey. What does it say there? That Aaron HaKoyen once knew one of the Yidden who he knew at night was a thief. When everybody would go to sleep, he was a burglar. He'd go break into different people's places and he would go and rob them. So he was wondering what to do. So what he did was one day he meets this guy, and by day he was like, oh, this nice guy, he put on a show. So Aaron HaKoyen went over to him and hugged him and said to him, you have such great potential. I really am excited to see what you're going to grow into, what kind of person you're going to become. What happened next time? Next time he went to steal, he suddenly reminded the hug of Aaron, and it made him feel like he said, here's a man that believes in me. I'm going to disappoint him. So from then on, he stopped. It was like a deterrent. So Rabbi Baumgartner already understood the message. So he went to the Bocher and, of course, hugged him and told him similar thing. Now, this doesn't mean there's no room for discipline. It's just a lesson that sometimes people need is love and care. And they need, like I said, a good passion. I find people who have challenges, especially in the area that we're talking about, if they're musically inclined, encourage them to play an instrument, use their free time to do something musical. If someone's artistic, if someone likes to write, if someone likes computer programming, it's critical to take energy and use it for something which you're excited about yourself. Generally speaking, you'll have less excitement in things that are negative. Because at the end of the day, sexual energy is very powerful. And the way to deflect it is by using the energy in good places, and meaning using it for positive things. When a person is very excited about something and they're involved in a project, less likely they're going to wander off in the wrong places. That's my response to that question. I hope I wasn't too graphic or blunt, but sometimes you need to speak directly. And if this isn't relevant to you guys because you're such tzaddikim, then that's a great blessing. Great. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Thank you very much, guys. What time is it?
Rabbi Jacobson, for taking your time and coming out here.
Sure. What's your name? Oh. Your father is...
Bach, before you go for a minute,